Hello and welcome back to the Louisa Miller Out YouTube channel. Today we are going to be doing a vegetable tier list, the ultimate vegetable tier list, in fact, because I am very passionate about vegetables. So let's begin. Today's first vegetable is actually two vegetables. It is acorn and delicata squash. And when I was a child, someone in my house misheard delicata as bella caca. I'm pretty sure it was my nonna who's Italian, and bella caca means beautiful poop in Italian, and I've never been able to get that out of my head. But acorn squash and delicata squash are both pretty good, and for that reason, I am putting them in the B tier. Let's move on to artichokes. Now, artichokes are okay in certain circumstances, but they're so goddamn difficult to eat. You have to chew on them, you have to gnaw on the leaf like a little koala eating eucalyptus. It makes me feel so degraded. Koalas make me think of chlamydia, which is unpleasant and unfortunate. So for that reason, artichokes are in the D tier. Our next vegetable is arugula. And I think arugula looks really great and is great in theory, but in practice, it is so goddamn bitter. There are so many other salad greens that I would rather be eating than arugula. There are so many dark leafy greens I would rather be eating than arugula, so arugula also goes in the D tier. Our next vegetable is beets, and beets are a very aesthetically pleasing vegetable. They are a beautiful color, and they can be very sweet if prepared correctly and delicious if roasted, but I am not crazy about beets personally. They stain everything, and the specific flavor of beets is just a little bit weird to me. I don't know, that's just my personal taste. Feel free to disagree with me, but I wouldn't go out of my way to eat beets, and therefore I've placed them in the C tier. Our next vegetable is bell peppers. Now, bell peppers can be really good for snacking, but they're really, really difficult to cut. Like, it's so annoying to have to cut a bell pepper. And I would never want to eat too many bell peppers. Like, I would eat like a couple bites of bell pepper, but I don't want like a whole one, you know? It's too much. I put bell peppers in the C tier. Our next vegetable is broccoli, and I absolutely love broccoli. Broccoli is amazing. It looks like tiny trees. It reminds you to save the trees. It is absolutely delicious anyway. I like it steamed and roasted the most. I don't really like it raw, but that's the only way that I don't like broccoli. So broccoli goes in the S tier, our first S tier vegetable. Okay, the next one is bok choy, and I personally really like bok choy, but if it's not prepared correctly, it can be really bitter, especially at the base. And I have like unpleasant memories of like biting into the bottom of a bok choy and getting like little gritty bits of dirt in my teeth. And that's good because you know it's organic, but I'm really bad at washing vegetables. So anything that has like a butt where like dirt can get lodged is kind of inconvenient for me. And for that reason, bok choy is in the B tier. Our next vegetable is Brussels sprouts. And Brussels sprouts are part of that family with like broccoli and kale and cauliflower, and they're all part of the same plant. Brussels sprouts are absolutely delicious. I love them. Even though some people think they're really bitter, I think that they're amazing. And they're so fun to eat. They're so adorable. And for that reason, Brussels sprouts made it into the S tier. Our next vegetable is butter lettuce. And butter lettuce is really just innocuous. I can't think of any reason to dislike butter lettuce. There is absolutely nothing wrong with butter lettuce. It is delicious, it is tender, it is crispy. The only problem is that it takes up a lot of space in the fridge, is what I'm trying to say. But that's the only thing wrong with it, so I put it in the A tier. Our next vegetable is butternut squash, and butternut squash is amazing. I love butternut squash. The only problem is when it's like underripe and it's like really stringy. That's the only time when I will not eat butternut squash, but a perfectly roasted butternut squash or even like a sautéed butternut squash, like you can't go wrong. You absolutely cannot go wrong. So butternut squash is also in the S tier. Okay, now moving on, we have cabbage, both red and green cabbage. So I absolutely love cabbage when it's in things. Like I love Napa cabbage, I love kimchi. I love kimchi so much. I would marry kimchi. I love cabbage in stir fries. I love it in soups. I absolutely love cabbage when it's in other things, but cabbage by itself for me is kind of underwhelming. So cabbage is in the B tier solidly. Next, we have carrots. And carrots, I am very enthusiastic about carrots, you guys. I like orange carrots, purple carrots, white carrots, yellow carrots. All kinds of carrots are amazing. I think regular, plain old orange carrots are probably my fave. And carrots are amazing cooked, they're amazing raw. I really can't think of any way to prepare a carrot that would not be delicious. So carrots go in the A tier. Next is cassava. And cassava is a very interesting vegetable. It's a starch, so it's kind of like a potato or a yam. But the problem is, if you prepare cassava wrong, it's extremely poisonous. So I would never make cassava in my own kitchen because I would be too scared of accidentally poisoning myself. But if I can get cassava from some kind of food purveyor, I will be a very happy person. I remember when my family went to Guadeloupe, we would get this chocolate that had cassava in it, and it was totally amazing. It was totally crunchy. It tasted kind of like potato chips. So I guess cassava is kind of like a potato. The next vegetable on the list is cauliflower. And cauliflower is kind of like broccoli's less interesting cousin. Like, I really like cauliflower, but you have to do a lot to it to make it interesting. You have to, like, really rub it in some spices or, like, roast it in some nice olive oil with sea salt and, like, get it really crispy. You have to do something to it. You have to really try, whereas broccoli is just good steamed. And I mean, cauliflower is okay steamed, but it's no broccoli, that's for sure. And so I feel like, unfortunately, because broccoli is so amazing, cauliflower kind of pales in comparison. No pun intended, it literally is paler than broccoli. So I have put cauliflower in the A tier. Okay, next is celeriac. And celeriac is kind of like a big white radish, but if you cut it up and put it in like a good salad or like roast it maybe, I think celeriac can be really good. It has a lot of potential, but it's not one of my favorite root vegetables. You know, I'm not chomping at the bit to get some celeriac, so I put it in the C tier. Next is celery. And celery, I personally love. I know some people think celery is like really boring and you have to chew it forever and it's like has these weird strings in it. But I have loved celery ever since I was a little kid. I used to like dissect it and peel it apart and take out all the little strings. And celery is just so fun. It has such an interesting structure. And I really like how salty it is. It's a naturally very salty vegetable. So, love that for me. Love ants on a log. Celery is a winner. So I put it in the B tier because it's not like, it's not like a superstar, but celery is pretty damn good. Okay, so next is chard. All types of chard. Swiss chard, rainbow chard. Chard is really, really fun. It's a beautiful, colorful vegetable. It's really good sauteed or steamed. And you do kind of have to chew it forever, and it does take a while to cook, but I really like chard. It's a dark leafy green full of nutrients, super good for you, and I put it in the B tier. Next on the list is collard greens. Now, collard greens are kind of culturally significant to me because my mother is from the South. I feel like I ate collard greens pretty consistently growing up, and they're just full of nutrients. They're a dark leafy green, and they're so damn delicious, especially if you braise them in like a little apple cider. Collard greens are amazing. So I put them in the A tier. Next on the list is corn. Now, I personally think corn is kind of boring. A lot of people probably really like corn, but for me, it's like summer sweet corn on the cob, or like a roasted corn in like some kind of Mexican dish is the only way I'll really enjoy corn. Oh, and I also really like elotes. Like, I like big special kinds of corn. Corn for me is kind of neutral. Like, you can do a lot of things with it. It's like very versatile, and some of those things are really great, and some of them are absolutely disgusting, like creamed corn, for example. Terrible. That sounds revolting. For this reason, I have placed corn in the C tier. Okay, so next on the list is cucumber, and I love cucumber. Cucumber is crunchy, cucumber is hydrating, cucumber is mostly a very pleasant texture. There are some cucumbers that are really bad and really too watery and gross and squishy, and sometimes the skin of a cucumber tastes a little bit toxic, but I think that might only be like cucumbers that have been sprayed with pesticides. So I think cucumber in general is a pretty reliable vegetable. It's pretty much always going to taste the same, and it is delicious. So I put cucumber in the B tier. Alright, next on the list is daikon, and daikon is a type of Japanese radish. Oh my god, daikon literally means big root in Japanese. That's so cute. Okay, so daikon is like a big long white radish, and I personally absolutely love daikon when it's pickled. I don't really eat it any other way. I don't think I've ever had like raw daikon, but I'm sure that it wouldn't be too bad. It's just I prefer pickled daikon. So because I only really like to eat it one way, I put it in the B tier, but I love pickled daikon. It's awesome. It's awesome in kimchi, it's awesome in sushi. It's awesome in literally anything. Next is eggplant. And I have a personal vendetta against eggplant. I think eggplant is an evil, satanic, disgusting vegetable. It is the texture of a dead snail or a dead slug that you find on the sidewalk after a heavy rain. Eggplant is horrible. It's slimy, it's squishy, it's stringy. It's just terrible. The only way I like it is in my grandmother's ratatouille that she makes occasionally. Um, but even then, it's just like tolerable. It's not amazing. Like, I don't think there's anything that you could do to eggplant that would make me like want to eat it. So for that reason, eggplant is in the F tier, and it's our first vegetable in the F tier today. All right, next up is garlic. And garlic is absolutely delicious in pretty much anything. Like, if you add garlic to something, it's just gonna add so much flavor. It's gonna be a great time if you add garlic. The only problem is that I don't like to eat garlic just by itself. Like, some people really like roasted garlic and they'll just eat whole cloves of garlic. Me personally, I can't really do that. It's too. I don't know, it's too weird. Like, I'm just not crazy about a whole mouthful of garlic, but I put it in the B tier because I really like it and it's pretty good with literally any roasted vegetable. Our next item is green beans. And green beans for me are just kind of underwhelming. Like, I don't like the texture, I don't like the flavor. Green beans are so boring. And when I think of green beans, I think of those like frozen ones that are like steamed and they're so mushy and gray and just like depressing. I just think like green beans make me depressed. They just make me feel so low, so low. So green beans are in the D tier. Okay, that was depressing. We need to pep it up. Okay. The next item is Japanese or purple Okinawan sweet potato, and I love these. I absolutely love any kind of Japanese sweet potato, any kind of sweet potato with yellow or white flesh and purple skin and I or like tan skin, and then I absolutely love the purple ones with purple flesh and purple skin. I love those Okinawan sweet potatoes. They're super good for you. They're full of antioxidants. They're delicious and sweet, and they're so easy to cook. You can just steam them, you can roast them, you can do literally anything with them, and they'll be great. So, these very special potatoes are in the S tier. I wish they were more widely available so more people could enjoy them. Next up is kale. And kale is kind of like a very stereotypical health food. Like, you're like, oh yeah, I eat kale salads. But honestly, kale salads are so delicious. Like, I love kale salad. I absolutely love it. And I love kale steamed. I love it sauteed. Like, I love it roasted in the oven to make kale chips with some nutritional yeast. Amazing. Amazing. Kale is actually quite a versatile vegetable, and I think it's super delicious, so I put kale in the A tier. Next up is kohlrabi, and kohlrabi is okay, but it's like really, really bitter and somehow also bland at the same time. Like, it doesn't really have much of a flavor except for that weird bitterness, and it's the texture of an apple, which is kind of off-putting and disconcerting because when I bite into an apple, I'm expecting it to taste like apple, but when you bite into a kohlrabi, it tastes like regret. And I feel like I used to eat kohlrabi with peanut butter, and that was kind of good, but only because of the peanut butter. Like, the kohlrabi was not pulling its weight in that situation. So I've put kohlrabi in the D tier because I feel like it just wronged me as a child, and I just can't get over that. Next is leek. Now, leeks are really good, like, in other things, but this one time I had this dish at a restaurant that was, like, leeks as the star of the dish, and it was kind of weird. Like, the leek is kind of like garlic in that I don't want to eat too much of it just by itself, but I think leeks are really good in other things, so I put it in the C tier. Next up is parsnips. Now, parsnips can be really good if they're, like, roasted just right, but honestly, I think they can also be kind of boring and kind of just like, I don't know, they remind me of beets. Like, parsnips are kind of like a colorless version of beets. And the only reason I like beets is because of the beautiful color and the antioxidants. So, I don't know, parsnips are kind of mid for me. so I put them in the C tier because I don't know, they can be good if you roast them like perfectly, but there's not much margin of error for parsnips. There's not really room to fuck around with parsnips. Anyway, our next item is peas. Now, peas, again, for me, are just kind of underwhelming. Like, they can be so mushy and so dry, but I also really like peas when they're in like a risotto or a pasta, or like peas in other things are great. Peas by themselves are abysmal. So I've put peas in the C tier, which I would say is very generous of me. Peas should be thanking their lucky stars that I put them in the C tier because they were very close to the D tier. So peas are a low C. Next is radicchio. And as an Italian, I feel like it's my responsibility to love radicchio. I think radicchio is amazing in a salad, amazing like I don't know, like cooked in a cast iron skillet with a bunch of like potatoes and onions and stuff. My nonna made that for me once. It was awesome. I love radicchio. It's such a fun purple color, purple and white. So I've put radicchio in the B tier. All right, next up is radish. And for me, radish is kind of just something that I would never voluntarily eat. Like if it's in something else, I'm not going to like go through and pick it out, but I would never choose to put a radish on my plate. And I think that speaks volumes. So I've put radish in the F tier because it's just so peppery and bitter, and I'm just not crazy about it. Okay, next is red onion. And there's only one way that I like to eat red onions, and that is pickled. But pickled red onions are not as good as like pickled daikon or pickled napa cabbage or pickled carrots. Like pickled red onion is something that I'll put like on a burrito bowl or something for like a little bit of freshness, but I don't think I would ever buy pickled red onions like just for shits and giggles, you know? Like I have to have a plan for pickled red onions. They have to be part of something else. They can't really, I wouldn't just eat them out of the jar standing in front of the fridge like I would with kimchi. So, for that reason, red onion is in the F tier because I hate raw red onion. Raw red onion is, again, satanic, it's evil, it's the Antichrist. I hate it. Okay, next is romaine. Now, romaine is again a very innocuous lettuce. I love the texture of romaine. It's very crunchy, it's fresh, it's vibrant. But if you eat too much of it, it does get kind of weird. Like, I start feeling like a rabbit if I eat too much just plain romaine. So, for that reason, romaine ended up in the B tier. Next, we have scallions. Some people call these like spring onions or green onions. I don't know what the difference is between all of those things, but I call them scallions. And I love scallions like on top of like a rice bowl or just as a topper for something. But I don't think I would ever eat scallions like by themselves, or I don't think I need scallions. I just don't think I need them. So I put them in the C tier because they can be good, but they're not necessary unless the dish has like nothing green on it and it needs a little green. You need a little green. Like, do not get me wrong, I think you need a little green. Next up is snap peas. And snap peas are a hassle, guys. Snap peas are really annoying. You have to snap off the little ends, there's a string in them. They're really annoying to eat, but they do taste pretty good. So I've put snap peas in C tier. Next up is spaghetti squash, and I have trauma from spaghetti squash because as a child, my parents went through some kind of low carb diet phase at some point. It was a dark time. I remember them replacing regular spaghetti with spaghetti squash, and I got excited because I thought we were having spaghetti, and we were not. We were having this stringy, god awful mess. And I just remember the trauma from my childhood of eating spaghetti squash and trying to pretend it was real pasta, and that makes me so sad inside. And for that reason, spaghetti squash ended up in the F tier. Sorry, not sorry. I think it can be good if it's prepared in a very special way. Um, but I think most of the time it's just going to be stringy and terrible. Okay, next up is regular sweet potatoes or yams. And personally, I prefer Japanese sweet potatoes or purple potatoes. I absolutely love those. Sweet potatoes are okay, like they're good. I love them in a salad. I love them in like a harvest bowl. So I put sweet potatoes in the B tier just because they're not as good as Japanese sweet potatoes, but I think they're way better than white potatoes, as you will see later on. All right, next up is tomato. And yes, I know some of these are fruits, okay? Don't get all don't get all nitpicky with me in the comment section about how a lot of these are actually fruits. I know, okay, but tomatoes are savory and that is why I consider them a vegetable. Even though sweet potatoes are sweet and I don't consider them a fruit, but they're tubers. They're the root of the plant, so they're not a fruit. Anyway, I'm not a botanist. Do not hold me accountable for making sure everything on this list is actually a vegetable. They are commonly considered vegetables by society. Tomatoes are in the A tier because I love tomatoes. Tomatoes are great cooked, they are great raw. The only thing is, I don't like the seeds. Like, the seeds are all slimy and goopy and disgusting. But if a tomato is not mostly seed, then I'll be okay. Like, if it's mostly flesh, that's great. I love flesh, I love tomato flesh. Delicious. Next up is water chestnut, and water chestnuts are another one of those vegetables where it's like the texture of an apple, but it tastes like nothing. Like, water chestnuts do not have much of a flavor, but I love them in like a stir fry, I love them in a rice dish. So for that reason, water chestnuts ended up in C tier because I like them in other things. I just wouldn't go out of my way to eat them. Next is white or yellow onion. And personally, I think white and yellow onions are disgusting, but not as disgusting as red onions. So, the flavor of onion infused into a dish is great, but the actual onions themselves are just terrible. Like, I wish so desperately that you never had to cut and saute onions, because cutting onions is unpleasant, it makes you cry. Cooking onions also makes you cry. The onions, when they're cooked, I sometimes pick them out because their texture is so unpleasant. I really don't like onions, guys, so I put them in the D tier. Alright, next up is white potatoes. And this one is going to be controversial. I feel like I'm going to get flamed for this, but I really don't like white potatoes. I think they're incredibly boring. Um, you have to do a lot to them to make them delicious. I do like the little golden potatoes, like the little crispy fingerling potatoes, but I really just don't like regular white potatoes. And there's a lot that you can do with them. You can make latkes, you can make like knishes, you can make pierogies. I don't know, like you can make gnocchi, but all of those things are kind of mid to me. Like, I don't know. I'm not crazy about regular potatoes. I really like sweet potatoes, but that's it. So I put white potatoes in the D tier because, alright, our last vegetable on this list is zucchini. And personally, I think zucchini is pretty awful. I think that, like, if you saute it with like some tamari, like you can get a pretty good flavor on it, but zucchini is incredibly bland, it's incredibly squishy and watery, and it's just terrible raw. It's not great cooked. It's such a underwhelming texture. It goes all mushy in your mouth. Ugh, I do not like zucchini, guys. So zucchini, or courgette if you're British, has ended up in the F tier. And that is our last vegetable of the tier list. So I hope you enjoyed watching me draw on my silly little whiteboards today. I had a lot of fun doing this, and I hope that I do not get attacked too viciously in the comments section for my opinions. I would love to hear your opinions and whether you agree with my ranking or not. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you next time. Louisa Miller out.